Hello, Serbia! Here is the En Blanco y Negro piano duo,
Sahili Canovas,
Mirta Gomez. And today we're bringing you a very interesting project, the Cuban Contradance and its variants. Manuel Saumel, 1817-1870. The father of the Cuban Contradance, born in Havana, Cuba. He wrote 50 contradances for piano solo. All of them are for listening. There are other contradances for dancing, but this one specifically is for sit down, relax, and listen. It is a time of the programmatic music in Europe, and so is the time of the programmatic music in Cuba. Not only Manuel Saumel, also Ignacio Cervantes, another 19th century Cuban composer that I will be discussing later on. But let me focus first on Manuel Saumel. I'm going to be playing today 3 Cuban contradances that we have chosen for this afternoon. El Somatén, La Quejosita, and La Tedesco. As I mentioned before, programmatic music, all these pieces have a title with a reason. It is either an event going on in the city, or it is even an occasion in the family or in the milieu of friends or other composers getting together, but each piece has a reason of whatever event was going on. For example, Somatén is not a Spanish word, but it's a Catalonian word, Catalan, from the province of Catalonia in Spain, and it means on your guards. The second one, La Quejosita. La Quejosita means the person who's always complaining about something, complaining. And the last one, La Tedesco. La Tedesco, actually Tedesco is Italian. And if we translate Tedesco to English, Tedesco means German. But in this case, Fortunata Tedesco, a very famous Italian soprano, was visiting Havana to make her debut at the Teatro Tacón in Havana, Cuba. So as you can see, each piece with each title is based on an event. On the first contradance, El Somatén, is written in binary form, 2/4. Here we begin to see rhythms, some of the rhythms that we're going to discuss through the entire project of the Cuban contradance and its variants. We have the cinquillo rhythm, typical of the province of Oriente, Cuba. And then we have the tango habanera or habanera, what is, most people just say habanera, but we call it tango habanera, and the cinquillo. That is in the Somatén, the first contradance that I will be performing today. And I'm going to show it to you this minute, the rhythm of the cinquillo, that it was born in the province of Oriente, Cuba. And the tango habanera. And now I'm going to just play a little bit, hands together. second one, La Quejosita, the complaining one, is written in 6/8, but as you play the entire contradance, it fluctuates between 2/4 and 3/4. And here we have a different rhythm. Here we listen to the Guajira Criolla, also from the province of Oriente and also from the countryside of Oriente. The left hand is Zapateo. So I want you to listen first the rhythm of the Guajira Criolla. That's the right hand. Now the left hand do a different rhythm, Zapateo. Put the both hands together, Guajira Criolla, Zapateo.
I would like to talk a little bit about the Guajira style in Cuban music. The Guajira is part of the country music of Cuba, similar to the singing styles of criolla and punto cubano, both parts of the traditional Cuban country music. The Guajira has its roots in Canary Islands, Spain. Cuba was a Spanish colony for about 300 years. That's why our music has a great influence from the different parts of Spain. This rhythm originated in the east side of Cuba in the Oriente province. The composer Gisela Hernandez was born in Cárdenas, Matanzas, Cuba in 1912. She was a choir conductor, educator, and researcher of Cuban music. In 1957, Hernandez composed her piano work Cubanas. Cubanas is a cycle of 4 pieces. Now I will play for you Guajira by Gisela Hernandez. would also like to play another important piece by Gisela Hernandez, Zapateo Cubano. Zapateo is a dance that has its roots in Andalusia, Spain. It appears in Cuba in the countryside around 1550, 16th century. It is a style of dance with lively movement. The dance shows a gracious tapping of the feet. I will play for you the first section of the Zapateo Cubano. You can see a performance of this piece on YouTube at the address shown on your screen.
As previously mentioned, La Tedesco was the big event in Havana, Cuba at the time. Fortunata Tedesco, soprano from Italy, was visiting Havana to make her debut at the Teatro Tacón. And as I mentioned before, it's programmatic music, so he wrote this contradance in her honor. In this piece, we have only the tango habanera rhythm, and it has an introduction followed by a dance. This piece is actually the beginning of what later on we will hear what became the Cuban national dance, Danzón Cubano. So I'm going to just show a little bit of the introduction followed by a dance, but the whole piece, the rhythm that he writes in this contradance is the tango habanera or habanera rhythm. Introduction. The dance. Habanera rhythm in the left hand.
As Mirta said, all Cuban danzón has its roots in the first 8 measures of La Tedesco by Manuel Saumel. The danzón was first recognized as a new type of dance by the musician and composer from Matanzas, Cuba, Miguel Failde. In June 1877, Failde composed 4 danzones titled El delirio, la ingratitud, las quejas y las alturas de Simpson. The danzón became the national dance of Cuba until the 1920s. Now I would like to play for you the danzón Almendra, composed in 1937 by Abelardo Valdés. Almendra revolutionized the world of the danzón. At that time, all other danzones were fusions of foreign melodies like the zarzuelas, symphonic works, marches, etc. Almendra was completely new. Now I will show you a very interesting detail that Mirta has found. A parallel between Almendra and the Contradance La Tedesco by Manuel Saumel, written in 19th century. Here we have the introduction of the Almendra danzón. And here the dance from La Tedesco. We can see clearly how the rhythm of the danzón flows directly from the contradance, and how we can connect these two words despite the great difference in time.
back to the 19th century with Ignacio Cervantes Cabanac, born in 1847, died in 1905 in Havana, Cuba. Ignacio Cervantes studied at the Paris Conservatory in France, graduating with honors. Returns to Cuba. At the time was the movement of freedom for Cuba from Spain. Cuba at the time was a colony of Spain. It was a group of young people in Havana looking and working and fighting for that freedom. It was a time that the father decided to send him to exile, and that's when he comes to New York City. He wrote 40 dances for piano solo. Most of the dances were written in exile in New York City. He wrote them, sold them, got a little money, and gave that money for the revolution, for the freedom of Cuba from Spain. Though not all the 40 dances were written in exile, because the first time he ever wrote Soledad, he was only 10 years old, and is dedicated to his mother, whose name was Soledad. The one that we had chosen for this afternoon is 3 Cuban dances by Cervantes. El Velorio, that was published in London in 1900. Los Tres Golpes, and Adiós a Cuba, Goodbye to Cuba, that was written in New York in 1876. Los Tres Golpes, 3 knocks. That's what it means. And El Velorio, it means the wake. So in these dances, we are talking about rhythms that were already established in the Cuban contradances by Manuel Saumel. We have here present the cinquillo from the province of Oriente. We have here also the tango habanera or habanera. And we also have variants. That's why the title of our presentation is called The Cuban Contradance and its Variants. In this El Velorio, I'm going to talk about the cinquillo first. And what is very interesting between the cinquillo on the dance of Ignacio Cervantes and the cinquillo in El Somaten of Manuel Saumel is the writing of the rhythm. For example, in El Somaten, the first contradance that you heard, the cinquillo is written like this. In Ignacio Cervantes, it's still the same rhythm, but the writing is different. Same thing with the habanera rhythm. For example, in the Somaten, we have this rhythm. In Cervantes, we have a variant of the habanera rhythm, because if we play it as it's written in the contradance, it will be however, what he does, he ties one group of notes to the next one. So it's like this. Still the same rhythm, different writing. second dance of Cervantes, the three knocks. Tango habanera. Writing again, the same writing that he wrote in the previous danza, the previous dance. Here we have the cinquillo again. Here the cinquillo is more close to the way it was written in El Somaten, the Contradance, than the way it was written here in El Velorio. Let's see another sample. And Tango habanera, that is basically here he does write it. And the last one of the three dances is just very, very close to La Tedesco, the last one of the three contradances that I performed this afternoon. And it's an introduction followed by a dance. Here we do have the cinquillo as well, and we have, no, and here we don't have any habanera rhythm or any tango rhythm. We just have introduction dance with the cinquillo rhythm. And remember the Cuban contradance, the last one, the La Tedesco introduction, right? Now here we have the different introduction, but nevertheless is an introduction. And here we also have the dance. So there you are, variants based on the same rhythm, written differently, but the rhythm remains original and the same.
The habanera is a vocal and instrumental composition of urban origins. It is defined as a melodic line, lyrical romantic in character, with instrumental accompaniment and a rhythmic bass line. This rhythm is also known as tango congo. Now I would like to present a piece by Ernesto Lecuona, one of Cuban's most well-known musicians and composers. Lecuona was born in Guanabacoa, Alabama in 1895 and died in Tenerife, Spain in 1963. A prolific pianist and composer, Lecuona wrote more than 400 songs, operettas, ballets, and zarzuelas, in addition to more than 200 works for piano. His Afro-Cuban dances is a suite of 6 pieces. Now I will play for you Danza de los Ñáñigos, a rhythmic presentation of Tango Congo. Ñáñigos is the name given in Cuba to the members of Abaqua religions, a men's secret society. Here for you, Danza de los Ñáñigos by Ernesto Lecuona.
joining the 20th century with Carlo Borbolla, born in 1902, died in 1990 in Havana, Cuba. My presentation is two pieces by Carlo Borbolla from Ritmica Cubana Volume 3, Prelude and Montuno. Here we have two different rhythms. We have the son, we have the rumba, the beginning of the rumba. Of course, the cinquillo is present in the prelude. And then in the montuno, we also have the cinquillo, we have the estribillo, we have a melange of melodic rhythms, and we also have different motifs that go through the piece with different variation of the same rhythm. First of all, I'm going to talk about the prelude, son, with the rhythm of son that is from the province of Oriente in Cuba. Let me see. I want you to listen to the rhythm itself, son, S-O-N. The right hand, we hear the rhythm of rumba. So when we put together these two rhythms, this is what we get. As we move right along, then we have the cinquillo. And yes, indeed, we have the tango habanera. However, it's a variant, because what he does is this. We have the syncopated rhythm with the cinquillo. We have the rhythm of the song. We have the rumba. Of course, the tango habanera. With the song rhythm, and in the right hand the habanera. In the second piece, Montuno, from the countryside of Cuba, we have the estribillo in the right hand. the left hand, we have a singer, the voice of a singer. All of a sudden, there is a variant in the rhythm of the stribilo. Same rhythm. What he does, he add an extra note to make a variation within the same rhythm. For example, the beginning of the montuno with the stribilo. When he does the variation, he add just one note. In the right hand. In the left hand, he has some motif from the singer. So he does also variation. So when we put together the stribilo at the beginning of the piece, we have the stribilo and the singer. So this is how it sounds. We move on to the variants or variation on an original theme based with a one note difference. This is how it sounds. Later on in the piece, it goes back to the same variation with the added note. But that is just a bridge to begin what we call and response. In that frame, in that measure, we have a contra motif, a melodic line of both hands, but at the same time in, I would say, in contrary motions. So it will go. The left hand. Just very briefly to give entrance to what we call and response, which is this. And the left hand go. Putting hands together with the contramotive, melodic contramotive. Before we reach the call and answer, it will be like this. And so forth. That is Carlo Borbolla, Son Montuno.
Now, I would like to speak a little about the clave. In Cuban music, the clave refers to the rhythmic patterns produced with this percussion instrument. The clave is a guide for all the other instruments, including the voice. The rhythmic pattern fits in a measure of 4 beats and has 2 parts. One of 3 beats and another of 2 beats, like this. There are 2 types of rhythmic patterns, son clave and rumba clave. Now I'm going to play for you Toque de Clave by the composer Gisela Hernandez, that is part of her work Cubanas.
Joaquin Nin Kulmel is born in 1908 in Berlin, Germany, the son of Joaquin Nin y Castellanos and Rosa Kulmel, both Cubans. And of course, we all know Joaquin Nin, father, very famous pianist and composer. I'm going to talk about the Cuban dances written in 1985 in Paris. The tradition continues from the Cuban contradances to the dances, to the danzón, to the son, to the montuno, and now we are in 1985, 20th century. In the first Cuban dance called El Malecón, we still are with programmatic music, is dedicated to the boardwalk of Havana. In the second one, El Guante, the glove, dedicated to the ethnographer Lydia Cabrera, also Cuban. What I'm going to talk about is the rhythmic patterns in these two Cuban dances from 1985. What Nim Kulmel does is that on the first half of the piece, he plays around with the three voices that he brings into this composition, because we have the soprano, which is what he called popular syncopation. The soprano. Then we have the alto doing the tango habanera rhythm or habanera rhythm. And then we have the tenor doing the same popular syncopation. And then he continued to the next measures with the cinquillo. So I'm going to play the soprano and the tenor, which is the same syncopated popular or popular syncopation. Now I'm going to add the alto with the tango habanera or habanera rhythm. What he does is begins this El Malecón, the boardwalk of Havana, with those rhythms. And later on, he changes to the tango habanera on the right hand with a popular syncopation in the left. The right hand is the tango habanera, so it goes. So he plays with the rhythms, sometimes right, sometimes left, sometimes in between. Then, for the second half of this particular dance, he starts with a variation. Through the second half we have that. So now I'm going to perform Joaquin Nin Kulmel, El Malecón, the boardwalk of Havana, 1985, written in Paris from the cycle of 12 Cuban dances. same popular syncopation. He start the same way he started with El Malecón. Okay? He does the same rhythm. And the same thing. On the alto, we have the tango habanera. And in the left hand, we have habanera again, set with variant. Right there, as I explained it before in El Malecón, he changes rhythm, sometimes right hand, sometimes left hand, sometimes the tango habanera is in the right, sometimes in the left, sometimes in the alto, sometimes in the tenor. So here's a little bit of the guante. In the guante, we have the cinquillo, the tango habanera in the popular syncopation. So it's basically the same thing. And in the second part, he starts with the same rhythm, except that on the fourth measure of the second part, he uses the syncopation. And go back to the primary rhythms that he uses in both, in El Malecón and El Guante. Again, the guante is the glove written for the Cuban ethnographer Lidia Cabrera. So we continue with Joaquin Nim with the programmatic music as well that we've been discussing and talking about since the 19th century with the Cuban contradances by Manuel Saumel. Thank you. I just would like to share with you a few things about Joaquin Kuhlmann. He was born in Berlin in 1908, died in Berkeley, California in 2004. I had the honor of meeting him when I was a teenager. I was playing a concert in San Francisco, coming from Juilliard School in New York. I came to play a concert, and it was announced in the Examiner, San Francisco Examiner and San Francisco Chronicle, both San Francisco newspapers. And apparently he saw it, and he showed up because I was playing Nim Kuhlmann in that recital. He showed up with music, his famous tonadas. That collection of his pieces, tonadas, are based on each province of Spain, and he gave it to me as a gift. After that, he invited us, the manager, my manager at the time, to his beautiful, just gorgeous mansion in Berkeley Hills in California. And he took us to a Russian restaurant. And right there, we began a wonderful relationship that ended in 2004 when he died. I call him, I would say maybe once a month, or maybe once every 2 months, but I kept in touch with him. As I mentioned, it was a pleasure to meet him, and it was a pleasure to share moments with him. There is a picture that you're going to see in this documentary that it has to do with an evening, a beautiful evening in New York City that Alicia de la Rocha invited us for dinner. So I'm here, then Joaquin Nin, like this with both of us, and Alicia de la Rocha. Also, I would like to say that he is the son of Joaquin Nin y Castellanos. He used to call his own dad Joaquinito, and he told me the story of Joaquinito, why he called it Joaquinito. And his mother is Rosa Colmel, was a very famous soprano, the daughter of a Danish diplomat in Havana. But both parents were born in Cuba, in Havana, Nin y Castellanos and Rosa Colmel. And the 3 children they had, the oldest, Rodrigo, was born in Bogota, Colombia. Anais Nin, the famous writer, was born in Paris, and Joaquin Nin Culmel was born in Berlin. So I hope you enjoy this little biography of Joaquin Nin Culmel.
Once again, we would like to thank Professor Dorian Leyak for inviting us to participate in this event, World Piano Conference 2021. We hope you have enjoyed this journey, 19th and 20th century Cuban music, from the contradance to the song. We are inviting you to listen to 3 Cuban dances by Ignacio Cervantes to close our program.
Thank
Thank you.
Bye.